Okay, let's start out with the oscillators on the DSI Tom Oberheim OB-6. Let's start out with VCO1. That's our great sawtooth sound. Okay, the frequency setting is the same as it is on the Prophet 6, and that is, it is quantized to individual notes. Yes, you did hear stepping. It's because it's quantized the individual notes. The default seems to be C2. But we do have a huge range, of course, down to the clicks when the frequency is as low as it goes, and noises that I can still hear even with my hearing. But still, very, very high. Okay, one of the great things about this oscillator, VCO1, is that we have a continuously variable wave shape going from sawtooth to square wave. So we have a whole bunch of different wave shapes that occur as we move from this shape to this shape. So that gives you, yes, a lot of timbral possibility. That's not a sawtooth wave, not a square wave. It's somewhere in between. And also, when you're somewhere in the midst of this, actually anywhere, you're going to be able to also shape the wave shape by moving the pulse width. Because the minute you get away from sawtooth, you're already entering into square wave way over here. So throughout this entire range, you can use the pulse width to further change the timbre of the sound. It gets interesting because this pulse width allows a pulse width of 0%. Right in the center is 50%, and then we move up towards 100%. We don't ever get to 100% on this particular synthesizer, which is fine because at 100% it goes quiet. But you can hear the square wave fading out as we go down to 0%. So you're just getting what's left of the sawtooth, which gives you possibilities for different sounds. But once we get all the way to the square wave, that's 0%. We won't hear any sound. So if you're ever playing this oscillator and you're like, hey, why isn't this thing working? You might look and check to see if you're on fully square wave with a pulse width of 0. So there's our square wave, which is already rich and wonderful. And yes, you are, when we get into the X mod or cross mod, we'll be able to talk about modulating this wave shape in the way that's happening as I'm turning these knobs. And of course, we'll talk about pulse width modulation a lot too. Next, let's talk about oscillator 2. I'm going to talk about sync in a separate video because the sync functionality is so much more powerful with this because you have a continuously variable wave shape. Okay, here's oscillator 2 coming in. Oscillator 2 is currently set to the triangle wave, which has a very nice little sizzle on top of it. And you can only find the triangle wave on oscillator 2. But it is continuously variable, so we can get the wave shapes that exist between the triangle and the sawtooth. Here, halfway between the triangle and the sawtooth, is a sound that has kind of the brightness of a sawtooth, but kind of the deepness, the depth, the low end of the triangle compared to the sawtooth. So, you know, you can make these choices when you're making a sound to get these timbral elements that you seek. And listen to that octave place. It goes up an octave. It's very powerful because you can use that in a sound to specifically, well, I mean, in a way, if you bring in oscillator 2, you've added an octave higher to your, so you have octave doubling. I'll listen to those two things together. Okay, no, we're not there yet. Okay, sorry. There's a little, sneak peek. But we have the ability to go all the way to the square wave, just like on oscillator 1. Pulse width, we have 0%, so there's nothing. It doesn't go up to 100%. We do have the ability to detune it compared to oscillator 1. So there they are together. We have a full sawtooth and a full square wave at 50%. Listen to how rich and crunchy that is. And yeah, they are cycling. They're out of tune with each other, and we don't even have the detune on. So that's, for us analog people, that's a great, great thing. We do have the ability to detune oscillator 2, so we'll get more of the sound we're looking for. Because this has the Oberheim factor, you know, it's just, you immediately get into that big, rich pad sound that Oberheims are so well known for. I could just listen to that all day. But yeah, you have a detune range of about a half step in both directions. I don't know how much you'll be using this, but you could. Okay, and then we get over here into the low frequency and keyboard buttons. Keyboard button, let's just talk about low frequency first. When you put oscillator 2 into low frequency, then you have a click generator. That's awesome. You know, because right? Click generator? No? Okay. I'm sorry, I'm just being obnoxious. What you've basically done is you have put oscillator 2 into sub-audio frequencies, modulation range frequencies. So when you want to use it as another LFO, you can. And let's just, for an example, let's direct it to control oscillator 1. Because the X mod or cross mod section of the OB-6 allows oscillator 2 to be a modulation source. When we put it in low frequency, it becomes a low frequency modulation source, and we can do things like this to oscillator 1. Okay, we are hearing the square wave because that's what we have VCO2 set to, but we can make it into triangle. Now I just held down 3 notes. Did you notice something about those 3 notes? They're all modulating at their own frequency. And that's the cool thing about the polymod / Xmod crossmod sound. It is polyphonic. So your modulation sources are different and will behave differently, which is cool. Now we have keyboard turned off. And why? Because keyboard controls the frequency of oscillator 2. So if it's not on, then the keyboard, you can press anywhere on the keyboard and the speed is the same. However, if we turn keyboard on, then we have speed control. And we go right into what 8-bit game mode. And that's a lot of fun. But yeah, that's a little dip into the X mod for us, or cross mod. I'm going to have to decide which one I'm going to call it. I mean, it's called cross mod, but it looks so cool with the X, you know, I don't know. Anyway, so that's what the low frequency and keyboard functionalities do on VCO2. Let's not forget sub-octave. Now, I know the inclination is usually to use sub-octave as a way to thicken up your basses. But remember, sub-octave could also be used in a more subtle way to thicken your sounds. As if this needs any thicker richness. But listen. Yeah, so just by using it more subtly, you can generate some richness, as well as giving you a big, nice square wave. Now, the sub-octave square wave is the more it sounds, it's like the more traditional sounding 50% square wave than perhaps what you would get in the other section. So you have that as another timbral source. And it sounds great, and it's big and thick and huge. And I just have to hear this again. Okay, that sounds great. We also have the noise source, which sounds pretty much like white noise. It's more fun when you use some of the other functionality, but you know, noise is nice. I often use noise in the midst of sounds because adding noise, again, subtly to a sound gives it a sort of rich, distorted sound. Here, listen. Okay, there's where we hear it, right? Then just back it off to where you can barely hear it. And it gives you the sort of noise that you often get from analog synthesizers. I know everyone's like, oh, I don't want something that has noise in it. But yes, you do if you want analog sound. We're not even using the filter. We're not using any of the cool effects. We're not using any of the cross mod or anything else. And already we have a great, usable, delicious, rich sound. That's kind of the Oberheim thing mixed with the DSI, you know, Prophet 6 coolness.